In a setback for Zee Enterprise, markets regulator Securities and Exchange Board of India SEBI has restrained Essel Group chairman Subhash Chandra and Zee Entertainment head Punit Goenka from holding any key managerial position until further notice. The interim order against the individuals was passed by following an investigation into the allegations that Chandra and his son Punit Goenka abused their positions as directors of Zee Entertainment in 2019 by siphoning off funds for their own benefit. The news will be a dampener to the merger between Zee Enterprises and Sony, which has already seen many twists and turns. Zee is expected to file an appeal with SAT, the Securities Appellate Tribunal, against SEBI order, which is expected to be heard on 15th of June. Now, before we throw open this discussion, let's quickly listen into what Subhash Chandra told CEO and MD of TV9, Barun Das, in December of 2022.
Why do you think the whole world always would have had his eyes on your businesses? And you have been throttling so many takeover bids. Like, as you rightly said, that you are, in those days, you're known to be a BD smoking rice trader. So you first befriended none other than Rupert Murdoch. And then you also stood up against him and said that India is not for sale. So why have people been so much enticed to come and take over your businesses?
Well, लड़की सुंदर होती है तो उसके पीछे बहुत लड़के आते हैं. If you are a successful business, people will want to have that business. Today, Zee Entertainment Enterprise Limited, I don't know, whatever is the market capitalization of that business, maybe 30,000-40,000 crore. But I have mentioned that in my public statements that this business cannot be recreated. And I still believe it cannot be recreated even with 10 lakh crore of investment. It got created. And I don't say that it is my creation. It was the timing, it was the right opportunity, there was a space, it got created. So who will not want to have that 10 lakh crore ka business in 40,000, 30,000, 50,000 crore?
You recently, in this Zee Entertainment, with regard to that, you called me up and said that Barun, Zee ko bachana hai. I mean, I obviously said that quite rightly, that I'm too insignificant for that. But what was the issue? Who were you saving Zee from?
The people, those who wanted to grab the Zee Entertainment.
No, but that's
Enterprise
Invesco
Limited.
Was coming in between the merger, right?
Invesco and the Invesco's supporter behind the scene.
So what happened?
They wanted to take over the business. And
they
we wanted to save that, and we have succeeded to save.
But you saved, but Sony is still a multinational, right? It's still not an Indian company.
Sony we have merged with each other. We are partners.
But they have the majority share.
They have majority, but doesn't matter.
Usually, you were very against multinationals. You wore your Indianness up your sleeves. But in this case,
Japanese are very different.
Japanese,
they are like Indians.
So you have a problem with the Western world, and I think
I don't say Western world, particular individuals or particular kind of corporations.
Your shareholding has dropped from 41% plus to 4% in Zee. And Invesco also, after objecting the merger, after standing in between the merger and the company, had now agreed to that and are supporting it and had been selling their shares also. So have they lost their faith in the conglomerate?
I don't know about that, because I think they sold the companies, their shares, to someone long back. And that someone, because they could not take over, so they have lost interest. They are not investors. They wanted to have control. So they have lost, and that's why probably they are selling. But we will again increase our stake to more than 25%.
Oh, really? Oh, that's very encouraging. What about the double A's? Have the Ambanis made a takeover bid of Zee Entertainment ever?
I will not like to comment.
You'll not like to comment.
All right, that is Subhash Chandra, of course, talking to TV9 CEO and MD way back in December of 2022. Emphasizing on some very, very important key points here. But Rakesh, I want to throw open this discussion, and let me quickly introduce, I have a brilliant panel here sitting with me in the studio. To my left, Krishnakumar, Rakesh Khar, Kartik, Malhotra. Gentlemen, appreciate you all taking time out. I wish there was more diversity here, but I would have...
You are the diversity, Shweta.
I'm the exception and the diversity. But let me quickly open this discussion with you, Rakesh. What exactly is happening at Zee at the moment?
I think what we saw briefly of the dialogue with Barun Das in conversation with Subhash Chandra sets the context for this entire controversy. So I think, you know, I'm not reading too much into what Subhash Chandra said, but the context is very well established. Things have probably moved between us. It's a seesaw kind of a situation from December 2022 to June 2023. And, but before I come to that, there are two very key parts to it. First and foremost is the SEBI order. SEBI is right in its position to investigate and must do so fearlessly without any favor or fear. So the second and most important part is what we didn't say in our intro is that it's an interim order. So there is no finality on the order. That leaves a certain window which is legitimate on behalf of SEBI as a regulator to go and, you know, give the opportunity to Zee and, you know, and say, you know, I'm holding myself against this order and I have an opportunity. And there are enough opportunities to do that. You mentioned SAT. So, you know, I think most likely Zee will go to SAT and seek a revision. But I do see a money control story where probably the first reaction has come from, the Zee board. R. Gopalan is the chairman of Zee board. R. Gopalan, if you remember, he was Secretary Department of Economic Affairs. He is a well-established bureaucrat who took over as the chairman of the board of Zee after Subhaji moved out in an executive role. So in that sense, he's saying that, I'm quoting the report from Money Control, the board of directors of Zee Entertainment has noted the interim, and they mark the word ex parte order. So this is an order where Zee believes and alleges that it's not been given a chance to represent itself. Okay. Issued by the Securities and Exchange Board of India with respect to Subhash Chandra and Punit Goenka, the board is currently in the process of reviewing the detailed order and appropriate legal advice is being sought in order to take the next steps as required. So one must not prejudge SEBI. Okay. It has the right mandate to do it. Second, Zee has all the wherewithal to go and, you know, fight it out in the court of law, that is SAT, and it could go independently to independent judiciary, which is the normal High Court, Supreme Court route. Having said that, I think the context is very well laid out in going back to the show with Varun Das that we saw briefly. The impact of this particular order, if it comes through, Shweta and my esteemed colleagues on the panel here, is that it is definitely going to, if not derail, it's going to inordinately delay the Sony-Zee merger. Okay. So that's where hangs a tale beyond Sony and Zee. It's a story of corporate India. It's a story of foreign direct investment in India. It's a story about India-Japanese relationship. It's a story about how we look at creator economy when it comes to India taking the leadership role globally. It's a story about us, you know, really exhibiting a case of bringing about a paradigm shift in ease of doing business, where we have made tall claims. So I'm saying let all stipulated regulators, in this case SEBI, NCLT, NCLAT, NSE, BSE, they've all gone through the labyrinth of this particular case, come and put their house in order, I'm using that word by choice, and have a final view on this particular deal. If there are challenges, let them come completely clean on that, rather than this piecemeal kind of a, you know, process that we're having.
Okay. And Kartik, the piecemeal process, the process has been delayed. The merger has seen a lot of twists and turns. And for the benefit of our viewers, if you could quickly elaborate on what has been the progress so far.
So Shweta, I'll come to that, but just to add to what Rakesh was saying, I think the timing of the SEBI interim order is also a little too much of a coincidence. I don't want to use the word suspect, but it's a bit of a coincidence given the progress at the Zee-Sony talks and the stage at which they had already reached. Right, I mean, we have the timeline and it's running in graphics. So for the benefit of our viewers, in the first half of this financial year, FY24, the deal was to go through, and that was the timeline announced by Sony and the promoters of Sony, that the merger will be complete and through by the 30th of September this year, H1 of FY24. Now, this order comes in June, leaving very little time, because remember, if this order were to go through as is, the interim order, then Punit Goenka would not be in a position, even Subhash Chandra for that matter, to take any director role in any publicly listed company. Whereas when the talks on the merger were being seen through and they were on the verge of completion, it was announced categorically that Punit Goenka is going to be the managing director of the merged entity for a period of 5 years. So now, if this order were to be challenged, and my sources at Zee Enterprises have confirmed to me that they are challenging this order and they are going to the Appellate Tribunal SAT on the 15th of this month is the hearing, which is Thursday, 2 days away. So Thursday is the hearing, and their real focus through their lawyers, and their lawyers in this case are Janak Dwarkadas, they are challenging the interim order, and they want this order to be repealed and reversed so that the deal does not get impacted at all. Now, what really has traversed so far is, and again what my sources confirmed to me, was that Punit Goenka himself has been, to quote the source, laser focused on the merger. So again, you know, by the timing, and I'll keep coming back to that. So he has been laser focused on the merger. He has taken sizable decisions, including the ICC cricket rights. Those were taken by Punit Goenka in the larger interest of creating growth capital from the merger with Sony to the tune of about $1.5 billion. Now, if this deal goes through, which, I mean, it should, I mean, unless this order is sustained and is not repealed, if the deal goes through, then the Zee promoter family, which is Subhash Chandra and family, will get 1100 crore rupees as a non-compete. Now, what my source has also confirmed is that this money is to be invested back by the family into the merged entity, through which they increase their shareholding from 3% to about 4%. Now, in this interview or in this conversation with Barun Das, we saw that Subhash Chandra had claimed that he wants to increase his shareholding to 25%. But by investing this 1100 crore rupees, we are looking at about a 4% stake of the promoter family in the merged entity. Now, all along this, there were other interested parties also. And on the show, Barun Das has asked Subhash Chandra that, you know, have the Ambanis made an offer, and he has said that he cannot comment on that. But enough and more whispers have been in the winds that there were talks of a merger and Reliance actually going ahead and merging or buying out Zee Entertainment. So those talks were also on. So you cannot really discard that as well from the overall discourse that we are having right now. So again, I mean, I just come back to the timing, and the timing seems a little bit of a coincidence that a particular mandate coming from the interim order that Punit Goenka and Subhash Chandra cannot own directorships in listed companies is bound to have a direct implication on the merger. And if the SAT were to rule in favor of Zee Enterprises, then there should not be any further roadblocks to the deal, because my source also said that, you know, every time the exchanges have given clearances, the BSE, the NSE have given clearances. Time and again, even a single word change or a single line change goes through the entire rigmarole, the entire process of fresh approvals, which are time consuming as well. So unless the SAT upholds the SEBI interim order, then I think we will have to have another discussion on the 15th of this month. But if the order were to be reversed, then I think there should not be a challenge to the Zee-Sony merger.
There's one more important date before we bring in Krishna. That's 16th June. That's when the NCLT will again review the NCLAT decision on, you know, the issue of exchanges, having red flagged this particular deal.
Right.
So interesting times, and it's too close to comfort in terms of if we were Sony, from Sony's perspective, they have put up a timeline, and which is already protracted timeline. It's not that for the first time they're saying that end of half one of this particular financial year. The deal started off, if I remember correctly, in September 2021. And so, you know, if we do a little contextual comparison, in COVID, we look at Jio, again a strategic importance area. We've been looking at, you know, telecom. We had 11 investors, and we're all very proud of those investments coming through, including from all the 3 big tech global companies. And that, in fact, reimagined the FDI perspective in India. That's telecom, and here we are in a created economy where India is supposed to lead the services sector economy globally, and we have some lead advantage here. We are yet not sure about how exactly this deal will pan out.
Right. In your assessment, Krishna, how will this deal pan out? I think Kartik laid the groundworks for what could happen, the likely outcome. And assuming the decision does not come in favor of Zee, what are the options left with the merged entity? Because Punit Goenka is not likely to continue. If that were to happen, that is, of course, the SEBI's interim order at the moment.
Right. You're talking about the worst case scenario. Let me begin with the what realistically sounds like, at least when you keep the ears to the ground as far as the markets are concerned. The Zee stock today was down to a low of 182. It has recovered from there to back to 192 rupees and 60 paise. So that tells you what the people in the street are feeling about this merger. And also you have recent surveys from analysts, overwhelming analysts have maintained and stock houses have maintained a buy call on the Zee stock. So that also tells you, what the market, the street is, feeling when it comes to the possibilities of this merger finally happening and going through. So which basically means that I again agree with Kartik completely. It is going to delay this process. All this SEBI order, then you have the Securities Appellate Tribunal hearing. All of these processes. And bear in mind, you just introduced this as so many twists and turns to this merger already, which means that there are enough and more vested interests who don't want this merger to happen. So that's very clear. While there are enough and more people who will benefit if this merger happens, especially if India's media and entertainment space. You're talking about a legacy brand, a legacy company like Zee over here that sort of began it all along with the Sun TV network back in the 90s. So so it's amazing that there is a way to go forward for Zee and continue its legacy. But then it has been caught up in one more issue or the other. But fact of the matter is that even today, even after the SEBI order, which, bear in mind, the most important point to note about is that it's an ex parte order, which means that Zee has not been allowed to express itself or express its defense of itself in the order so far. It's an ex parte order.
No,
which
SEBI has given it
21 days.
21 days
Yes.
to respond to SEBI.
That's
But in
exactly.
between, they can go to SAT.
Yeah,
That's what.
exactly. So as of now, that's all. Right now, all this happened. That SEBI has given an order. Enough and more needs to happen from here on. Fact of the matter is that the market and the street remains cautiously optimistic about this merger going through sooner than later.
Okay. In this entire conversation, we've hinted at a third party which may not be interested without naming names. It's been a tough ride, Rakesh, for Zee Entertainment and for Subhash Chandra for that matter. The entire deal, before it actually went ahead and it happened and there were papers signed, there was a lot of pressure from all sides.
I would
And including
use the word pressure. I think
Yes.
as he rightly mentioned, if it's a attractive proposition, I'm not quoting him as it is because I know you'll be
Thank you.
upset.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, so it's an attractive proposition, so people are coming, and you're also looking at the best possible scenario. In that case, I think Sony became the best possible scenario. Now, if someone has shown interest, is there a case of a jilted lover kind of a syndrome, if I can borrow that phrase? We can't.
Okay.
We don't have any evidence on the ground. But corporate mergers and acquisitions in this country have had a checkered history. But there is a geo example where I said, global tech companies which we are fighting every other day at the government level as also at the stakeholder level have made a smooth entry, and which are very happy about that. It is important that this deal comes through. I'm not bringing in Punit and Subhaji at this point of time. The deal must come through for the merit of the deal. See, Sony is a global behemoth in that sense. It has invested faith in India, and it has two divisions: the consumer electronics and the media space here. And Zee, obviously, like Krishna mentioned, it's a pioneer and an undisputed pioneer. If the two of them get together, it is bound to reimagine the media and entertainment landscape. So in that sense, this deal must come through. Of course, if there is a challenge on the leadership, that needs to be sorted out. What if this deal doesn't come through with Punit as the MD and the CEO of the company? That's something that has been agreed as part of the deal constitution, that too for a period of 5 years.
Okay.
That's something that needs to be imagined. Will Sony still go through, or will it abandon the deal? These are questions we don't have immediate answers.
Absolutely.
My own view is that Sony invested in Zee as the corporate entity, but it is Punit Goenka who has been driving that company in the leadership role for about 10 years now. I have a caveat. I have worked in that company for
Absolutely. Important disclaimer.
yeah, but that's the news company, not the
Right.
entertainment company.
Right.
So in that sense, I think if we were Sony, we would have second thoughts on getting into a relationship where the bride and the bridegroom are necessarily not familiar with each other.
And to answer the question that you asked me before, what happens, if this, interim order is, continues? So then you're looking at a situation where the new entities management will be completely different, and we'll have to see how, and if that's going to be different, and as he was pointing out, you have a clause already that locks in as for a 5 years. So then does it mean that, the Sony will have to eventually walk away if that doesn't work? But then all of these are possibilities are for a much later stage. We have 21 days for a response either which way, so we'll have to see how that goes.
Okay,
but I
so
want
what
to
is
ask
the
Rakesh,
delay? Right.
Yeah, I just want to ask you, Rakesh, how does, there are two members of the family who have been barred from taking directorship positions. Let's assume that continues. What stops a third family member to take on that leadership role in the merged entity?
Is there a third family member?
There are many.
So for the benefit of our viewers,
what
yes.
stops the third entity?
There are people in the family and the extended family who have been running other media companies. So, for instance, Jawahar Goel runs Dish TV, which again is in trouble for a variety of accounts, and he has a track record in business, especially distribution business, not as much in content business. Punit Goenka's younger brother, Amit Goenka, is on Zee TV, Zee Entertainment. So he right now looks after international business. See, Kartik, to respond to that question, this is an interesting case study in corporate India without a rival. Zee, a pioneer, it was the primary owner or the primary shareholder in this company. So they are at 4% today, and once they'll divest, it will be 3%. Finally, once the deal comes through. Punit Goenka, Amit Goenka, Subhash Chandra, they were promoters. Now they're employees.
But what stops them from acquiring more shares from the open market once this merged entity happens and actually take it up back to 25%, like he mentioned?
Yeah, that's what Subhash Chandra mentioned in that interview with Barun Das, which was a major headline in that sense, because he expressed his intent. He has to match it with action. Does he have the money to do it? I guess they're in a little bit of challenge right now, but can they shore up those resources? They have a lot of other assets in terms of real estate. There are a few other companies. Yes, Amit can come on the board, subject to Sony approving it. He's already been invested in the Zee Entertainment business. He was looking after the international business, has been there for a fairly long time. Second, anyone else outside of Subhash Chandra's two children, I doubt.
Okay.
And Subhash Chandra himself anyway is chairman emeritus, so he's exited.
Yeah.
He wouldn't be able to take a role in that position. And at 4% or 3%, you wouldn't be able to take too many board seats. I mean, I think Sony has been kind to give that MD and CEO seat, as also have Subhash Chandra continue, if I am correct, as chairman emeritus.
Right. Okay. Before I wind this up, I want to quickly understand what happens in case of a delay in merger. What are we looking at? Are there losses that will be sustained by Sony or Zee independently? What about consumers at large? Are they missing on something in case there's a delay?
There have been insolvency pleas against Zee in any case, right? So a delay, of course, I mean, if the company is, Zee has also been a profitable company in the past, right? And in case it were to be dragged into the insolvency route, then obviously every day's delay is sort of adding to the losses. But yeah, I mean, a delay is then a delay. What do you do? As long as the deal still goes through, it may take another month, another 6 months, maybe up to another year. I mean, that's just crystal ball gazing. But a delay is then a delay, and you've got to sort of live with it. As long as the deal still goes through, you continue to bleed for a little longer, you continue to hurt for a little longer. But then eventually, hopefully you go out smiling.
Just a couple of points quickly. This deal also went through the Competition Commission's, prism. It passed that test because there was this charge of monopoly with two big companies having majority, having large stakes in terms of market share in the media and entertainment landscape. So they passed that test as well. So if the merged entity obviously will come up with solutions where the entire, the landscape gets better and bigger. And the other thing is that, as I mentioned, it is a case study for Government of India to put collectively on how does it conduct itself in terms of ease of doing business. See, Japanese are invested heavily into India. I mean, Maruti is a great success story. So is Mitsubishi. So is Honda. So is HMSI, which is the Activa model, which has become a household name. So there are far too many companies, barring Toshiba, which ran into trouble on account of legal labor issues. I think Japanese investment is a bullish perspective on India. And Prime Minister Modi was in Tokyo, and we are looking at deepening the engagement. In that context, I think on fair play, on merit, this deal deserves to have a logical end either way.
Okay, okay. And that of course means that there will be a delay if and when there's going to be the SAT hearing, and the SAT hearing will decide on what the future course of action will be for both Subhash Chandra and Punit Goenka.